Jones was turning out words until 2 days before he died with the urgency of an old soldier cranking out rounds to turn back a frontal assault. So in a sense, James Jones went to war on December the 7th, 1941, and stayed there like many other combat veterans until his death on May the 9th, 1977. Willie Morris wrote the chapters in summary form from Jones's dictation, and the novel was published posthumously in 1978. The last step of a mission started more than 30 years ago. When Jones got out of the Army in 1944, he returned home to Illinois and began working with his writing mentor and patron, Lonnie Handy, a remarkable and complex character in her own right, who together with Jones and her husband, Harry, later started the Handy's Writers Colony in Marshall and helped Jones propel his writing career into international recognition. And this is Loney and Jones outside the house that he built after the publication of From Here to Eternity in Marshall that still stands. I think they're going to take a tour of it in Marshall tomorrow. After operating unofficially and from soon after Jones came home from the Army and met Handy, the colony was officially in operation until just after From Here to Eternity was published in '51 until Handy's death in the early '60s. Several novels were published from colony writers, and several books and articles have been written about the colony and Handy's collection of teaching creative writing with a disciplined regime that includes copying literally the works of writers she thought would benefit each colonist to study. Some of the novels include Jerry Schaap's Never the Same Again, written under the pseudonym of Gerald Tish, Edward Daly's Some Must Watch, Tom Chamalis's Never So Few, Jerry Peacock's Valhalla, which is about the Korean War, and I think it's the Korean War's twin to From Here to Eternity. It paints, and I think Norman Mailer said that it gives the best description and the best account of a Marine in combat that he's ever read. And the last colony resident I mentioned earlier, John wrote is Lucky Come Hawaii. Early on, Jones wrote an unpublished novel, They Shall Inherit the Laughter, under Handy's early tutelage, and sent it off to New York. Legendary Scribner's editor Maxwell Perkins liked the writing but steered Jones instead to write about the peacetime army in Hawaii and the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor after learning that Jones had been an eyewitness to the account. So Handy then shepherded the writing of the manuscript in Robinson and several other spots around the country, supported Jones, and picked up other young writers with whom to work. Long before Jones finished the manuscript of From Here to Eternity, he said he realized that he should write a trilogy to cover the ground he wanted. I was going to go from Pearl Harbor, which is here in Hawaii, to Guadalcanal, down in the Solomons, and then back to the hospital in Memphis, mainly the path I had taken, and finally realized that it would take 3 books to accomplish that. In addition to the trilogy, he managed to write, among other non-war-related works, a short novel, novella, The Pistol, and a nonfiction World War II, and numerous short stories and articles. And he worked as a consultant and dialogue writer on the movie The Longest Day, from Cornelius Ryan's nonfiction account of 1944's Allied invasion of Normandy. Not as well received by the critics, but no less significant, Jones wrote about the soldier's return to a changed world at home, that he was no longer understood or accepted, and some came running. And Helen Howe is going to give you an hour's talk on Some Came Running in just a few minutes. And I'm looking forward to that because Helen knows some things about that I'd never heard, which was set in southeastern Illinois and western Indiana. And then near the end of his life, he went back for one last look at war and its aftermath in a 1973 trip to Vietnam that resulted in Viet Journal. But let's take a quick look here at how Jones made his mark as a war novelist, and particularly as a World War II novelist. In From Here to Eternity, starting out in pre-war Hawaii, Jones introduces the universal soldier and begins the process of his evolution. The concept of this evolution was not necessarily clear-cut for Jones initially, but developed over time. When he explained it in World War II, he wrote, "I think that when the nationalistic or ideological propaganda and patriotic slogans are put aside, all the straining to convince a soldier that he is dying for something, it is the individual's soldiers full final acceptance of the fact that his name is already written down in the rolls of the already dead. Only then can he function as he ought to under fire. Close quotes. That real evolution is revealed, and Jones himself is revealed in Pruitt, the rebel bugler, boxer, and straight-duty soldier who loves the Army but hates the system that takes away his individualism and honor. He's in Warden, the cynical, hard-nosed first sergeant who dislikes officers and runs the company, taking care of his enlisted men without seeming to care for them. He's in Stark, the mess sergeant who feeds the troops well and runs the mess hall without interference from anyone, including Warden. They're regular Army men, all of them, and they're all hard drinkers. And they're men who are obviously based on real soldiers. So Jones speaks through these characters, and that's for all soldiers, and he understands them because he's one of them. And as the rugged individualist, Jones broke the language barrier in literature with From Here to Eternity when it was published in 1951. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye was published later that year and contained the controversial word, four-letter word. In his big 1948 World War II novel, The Naked and the Dead, Norman Mailer had been forced to use the word fug, F-U-G-G. There's a little anecdote about a literary, elderly literary woman meeting Mailer in New York at a literary party afterwards. And when she was introduced to him, she said, "Oh, you're the young man that doesn't know how to spell fuck." And now I've talked with, I haven't talked with Mailer about that, but I've talked with Mike Lennon, and he says, Norman says that was his publicist's story, but he said it made a good story, so he never said much about it. But anyway, Jones's realistic rendering of Army life contained, I think Kaylee said last night, 640 to start with. I'm not sure how many were in that first one, but they were forced to take some of them out. But Mailer, Henry Miller, Ernest Hemingway, and a host of other writers had wanted to include such language in their books that were published in the mainstream press, but they'd been unable to do so. Jones's writing reflected then a realistic, credible picture of the attack on Pearl Harbor and the peacetime Army with its adventures, bombs, drifters, many escaping the Depression, and its regular Army non-commissioned officers and officers waiting for a war to earn their promotions. The harsh language and coarse descriptions infused his work with authenticity, and I can't imagine the military without the harshness and coarseness Jones brings to his work. So he found his literary voice in From Here to Eternity, which became a blockbuster literary success that gave him an audience he needed to continue to write about the war and the Army for the rest of his life. Excuse me. But it enabled him to be ranked up there with the very best among war novelists, and when one looks at the literature of World War II. The late Willie Morris wrote that Jones, quote, is the one person to have given us this stunning corpus of work which will be read and remembered and reread 500 years from now. Now, then after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Jones helped set up the island defenses for the Japanese invasion that never came. It was from those days that Jones found material not only for From Here to Eternity to write, but also for his novel, The Pistol, which focused on a .45 caliber pistol a young soldier was carrying on duty the morning of the attack, and shows the significance of a soldier places on having one in wartime. The soldier knew the pistol wasn't much use against airplanes, but felt safe having one on his hip. And Jones also had a pistol at that time. Now, the writing style of the two works is of interest to me. From Here to Eternity is written more in the style of Thomas Wolfe, whom he had read in the Schofield Barracks Library. Lengthy sentences and long descriptive paragraphs. And it was a big novel published or divided into 5 books. The Pistol, on the other hand, is written more in a sparse, terse style that's reminiscent of Hemingway, another writer whom Jones had studied and admired. Shorter sentences and fewer details.